We are going to look now at writing the program that was in the document, the project that we just done with the if statement, and we're going to write it in PHP, but we're going to use the sort of second refinement version where we initialize the variables. Now there are quite a few differences between Python and PHP when we come to this, so I'll try to explain them as we go along. So first of all, let's get rid of this echo hello world. We don't need that, and put in our final statement. Now I'm not going to overload this with comments. I'm not going to put too many comments in because I think you'll lose the flow of the program. You won't be able to see it very clearly, but I'm going to put a couple of comments in, and this is the first one. I'm going to say at the top of my program I'm going to initialize the variables, so it's clear what we're trying to do. And then I'm going to take each of the variables that we had, which was the password, the secret, the prompt and the message, and set them out into PHP variables. So this is a variable starting with the $sign. So the first one I'm going to do is password, and I'm going to set that to the empty string. Now I've used single quotes here. You could use double quotes. It really doesn't matter, not for this anyway. But my preference is to use single quotes wherever possible, and the reason for that is I don't have to hold down the shift key and press number 2. I only have to press one key, so it's just easier. So the next one that we were looking at was the actual password we were going to set, which is swordfish, all lowercase. Now this is more important in PHP than it is in Python, and it's the reason for this sort of lengthier program or more difficult program. It is just because of case of strings, so it's quite important. So there's my secret word. Now I've got my prompt which I need to display to the user. So the prompt was please enter, please enter a password, put a space on the end, otherwise the words will just join together. And finally the message that we're going to print out, message equals you are logged in. So okay, there's all the variables I'm going to use in my program. I'm going to put a space between them so that I sort of separate them from the main program. And a quick mention of why I actually initialize variables, or a couple of reasons. In some languages it's necessary. Python and PHP, it's not really necessary to do this, but it's good practice to actually do it. So languages like BASIC or Pascal, you will have to declare your variables before you use them. So it's good practice because it covers a lot of languages. If you learnt a language without doing this, then when you met or later on when you did BASIC or Pascal, it would probably be something that would confuse you. So it's good to start off and declare them. Secondly, with modern phones, where they're used all over the world, and you write an app for a phone, they may be for different languages, French, Spanish, Chinese, whatever. And if you sort of separate out all of your words, then you can quickly change the language by using a language file to just change at the very top of your program all the words. So you'd read them in from a file in a different language, and your program doesn't need to change because it's not relying on strings in your program. There's no strings, they're all variables. So it's useful for making your program be usable in different languages. Right, so let's get to the main program. So the first thing I need to do is get the or put the prompt on the screen. So echo prompt, this matches the pseudocode and the flowchart. Remember, in Python, the prompt and the input can be on the same line. Most languages, we print something out, then we read something in. We don't combine the two in one line. So again, it's good practice to get used to actually printing these out. I know we do a refinement in Python where we stick them together, but that is Python specific. So we echo the prompt. The next thing we want to do is get the password from the user. Whoops, try not to use spaces. Is f gets standard in. So that's the line we need to read the keyboard and store the data that we type in into password. So we've got enough information now to actually test to see if we've entered the password. So we need an if statement. Now I'm going to write this in a very strange way. Python, it's just straightforward. But again, most languages use the method that I'm going to show you here. So I start off with my if statement, and then I open and close two parentheses. And my condition, the test, I'm going to test two things to see if it's true or false. And if it is true, then I'm going to have a start and an end. So two curly braces, one to start, one to end, and my code goes inside there. Now, that's not very obvious on flowcharts. It's not very obvious in pseudocode, although I used to write these begin and ends in my pseudocode. I kind of dropped them because, well, there's no good reason for dropping them. They should be included. Because if we've got statements like if statements, while statement, repeat statements, switch statements, they all have a start and an end. So maybe we should include those in the pseudocode as well. So what am I testing? Now this, well, before I go there, I'm going to write out the message. I'm going to, echo out the message. So that's pretty straightforward. That's the same as you would do in Python, just with a print statement. The only difference is really is this condition. In Python, we'd be saying something like, if the password is equal to the secret. That would be good enough in Python, but it does not work in PHP. That is not the way we compare two strings. So in PHP, what we need to do is use something called a function called string compare. So I'm going to do that at the front here. String compare. Open a bracket. And I'm going to keep my password there. And then I'm going to put the second one in, secret. So I'm going to compare those two strings and I'm going to close my bracket there. And over here, I'm going to put the value 1. 1 being true, 0 being false. So this says compare the strings password and secret. If they're the same, it will be true, 1. If they're different, it will be 0. Only if it's true will we print out this message. So that's a huge difference to the way that Python operates on this one. You're going to have to remember a few functions like string compare. So let's run this program and see it in action. So let's test it. First of all, an empty string, just press enter. We get nothing at all. Good. And then we're going to type let me in, press enter, and nothing at all. Really good. Now we're going to type swordfish, fingers crossed, that when I press enter, it's going to recognize that it is the password and it's going to echo out this message. There you go, you are logged in. So that's the PHP version. A few differences to Python that you need to get used to. And remember, if you're writing your answers in the exam, it would have to use this. You just couldn't swap it out for the Python version. You have to be accurate in the language you choose in the exam. So it's up to you. It's nice to see it. And a bit later on, we're going to see something called a switch statement in PHP, which works, but there's no such thing in Python, but it may appear in the exam. So there's reasons to look at PHP as well as Python. So that's that. Thank you.